And Pamela, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so why don't we get this started, okay? Good evening. My name is Pamela Alexander, and I am the president of the Northern Macomb branch of the NAACP. It is my honor to welcome you to the Northern Macomb County Branch NAACP Candidate Forum. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend this event to learn more about the candidates who are running in Macomb County. This is your opportunity to ask questions that impact you, your family, and our community. Just a little bit about our organization. The NAACP is nonpartisan. The NAACP does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. Throughout its history, the NAACP has worked to protect the rights of all voters. We want to make sure everyone in Macomb County understands their fundamental right to vote. It is our belief that you must be educated on the issues and have an expectation that the candidate you select is representing you and not their own self-interest. So with no further delay, I move this process over to our moderator for the evening, Ms. Emily Militz. Emily, you have the floor.
Thank you, Pamela, and thank you everyone for joining tonight. It's so great to see all of your faces and a lot of names that I just recognize from the local pages. And so kind of like we're excited to put a face to the names with the candidates tonight, I'm excited to see some faces from the names that I see on Facebook all the time. So I know we have some new faces tonight that aren't NAACP members. I thought I'd take just a few minutes to discuss the history of the NAACP and how it all leads to where we are today. So the NAACP, or National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, was established in 1909, and it's America's oldest and largest civil rights organization. It was formed in New York City by Black and white activists, partially in response to ongoing violence against African Americans around the country. During the civil rights era, of course, in the 1950s and 60s, the NAACP won major legal victories. And today, excuse me, the NAACP has more than 2,200 branches. We are one of those, and over 2 million members worldwide. And I'm sure you recognize the names of some of the most notable members. So you have Medgar Evers, the NAACP's first field secretary in Mississippi, who was assassinated by a white supremacist. Evers was a decorated U.S. Army combat veteran who had served in World War II. And he was engaged in efforts to overturn segregation and expand opportunities for voting rights. And then, of course, Martin Luther King Jr., who in 1963, King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference worked closely with the NAACP to organize the March on Washington, which attracted 250,000 people to the nation's capital. And that is where King delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. And then you have Thurgood Marshall, a civil rights lawyer who used the courts to fight Jim Crow and dismantle segregation. And Marshall became the nation's first Black United States Supreme Court justice. And if you know anything about what's going on right now, we're going through another very historical moment right now with our Supreme Court. He is best known for arguing the historic 1954 Brown versus Board of Education case, in which the Supreme Court declared separate but equal, unconstitutional in public schools. And then, of course, Rosa Parks, who founded the Montgomery NAACP Youth Council in the early 1940s. And later, as secretary of the Alabama State Conference of the NAACP, she traveled throughout the state, interviewing victims of discrimination and witnesses to lynchings. And then when she inspired the bus boycott, Parks had been the secretary of the local NAACP for 12 years. Of course, there's so many more notable and inspiring stories to come from the founding of the NAACP. But here we are in Northern Macomb County with a branch a little over a year old, trying to make a difference in our corner of the world. And one of the best ways we know to make a difference is to elect leaders of integrity that share our goals for Macomb County. And we not only want to make sure our constituents know where and how to vote, but what's on the ballot and who is on the ballot. And I'm guessing everyone here has filled out a ballot at some point in their lives, maybe just me that's guilty, and had a name on the ballot that you didn't know much about that person. And it's time for that to change. It's really, truly a privilege to be able to vote. And we're seeing a global struggle for democracy right now, but of course we have our own struggles here still. And so we want to make sure that people take the time to understand the platforms of the people running, because it's such an honor and a privilege to be able to vote. And we also believe communities thrive when they have an active relationship with their elected leaders. So we hope this is a step in that relationship with whoever should emerge victorious on election day. With that being said, it is time to start hearing from the candidates. Each candidate will have approximately 5 minutes to share with us what their goals are should they take office. I will introduce each candidate and what office they are running for. And then when each candidate has had an opportunity to speak, we will open up to a time of Q&A from the audience. You can use the raise hand function if you're familiar with that, or you can leave your questions in the chat if you'd rather us ask the question, but do try and make them specific for one of the candidates. Or if you want to hear from any of them, if you want to throw it and say, whoever wants this can take it, that's okay as well. But do try and focus our questions into a lens of civil rights, voting rights, education, criminal justice, and the other areas that are really part of the mission of the NAACP. Okay, I think we're ready to roll then. So our first candidate is James Diaz, running for the House of Representatives in the 36th district, which is a special election coming up in early May. Are you ready, Mr. Diaz? Oh, you're muted. Can we unmute Mr. Diaz? Or can he unmute? There we go.
Am I muted now? Okay, perfect. All right, start the clock. All right, well, hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to come talk to you and get the word out. For those of you who don't know, I am James Diaz. I'm running as a Democrat in Northern Macomb County in the District 36, which is currently vacant. We have no representation in this district right now. The seat is vacant, and we're looking to fill a special election, which is May 3rd. A little bit about me. I've lived in Macomb County for 50 plus years. I've married my high school sweetheart, Elisa, which many of you already know. We have a 26-year-old daughter, and we've lived in Shelby Township, I think now for about 10 years. And before that, we were in Macomb Township. Make a long story short, okay. So background, just a little bit, so if you don't know about me and my background, I went to Lawrence Tech. I got a bachelor's in mechanical engineering and master's in engineering management, and also graduated from Dartmouth Business School executive leadership training. My background is I actually ran manufacturing plants, mainly aerospace and defense manufacturing plants. I worked for Ford Motor Company for 15 years. I worked up through global supply chain. I worked at a company called Gulfstream, which made private jets. I was director of supply chain and logistics for Gulfstream. And then I was vice president of XPO Logistics for the aerospace and automotive sectors. We had about 40 plants across the United States. My whole function in my career, which I am now retired, was basically to solve complex problems and streamline processes. That's what I did. And I thought I did it very well. So what I'm attempting to do here now is run for political office. Some of the other things, a little bit about me, I do care about the community that I'm in. I spend a lot of my time currently volunteering, worked at developing all-inclusive park in Shelby Township. Raised about about $280,000 for the playground. We built the all-inclusive park. I worked at the Autism Center and helping them put in a kitchen. Working right now with Bear Lake Camp for the blind and renovating the cabin. So spend a lot of time in the community. That's where I figured I can do the best I could. But running for political office. So with regards to this seat, most of you may not know, in the Michigan State House, we're only 4 seats, at least from the Democrats, or for Democrats to take over the House. And we have 4 seats that are currently vacant. And so it's important that we get a Democrat in the seat. So in talking with some of the people out there, there's some things, this campaign is very unique compared to anyone else's. It is a special campaign, a special election campaign. It's going to be very low voter turnout. In fact, I expect about only 11,000 people are going to vote. And I can already tell in the primary, about 4,000 already voted for me. So the next thing is going to be trying to fill that gap. So there is 20,000 Democrats in Northern Macomb County that we have identified. I have 4 weeks now to figure out how to get some of those Democrats to let them know there is an election, and more importantly, to get them to sign an absentee ballot request. So I have packages right now, LITs, and this is to help all candidates in Northern Macomb County. In my LIT package, I basically am, which I'm currently putting out, and I could use help doing it, little piece on me. Then I basically am also giving the individual an application for absentee ballot to become on the permanent absentee, which will help all Democrats. I give them an envelope to mail to the clerk. And also I'm promoting the Northern Macomb Dem Club. So my focus of this election is to really develop and grow Democrats in Northern Macomb County. Get them active and get them out there and get them on the permanent absentee list. In my election, if you were on the absentee list, you did not get a ballot. You needed to request a ballot. So right now, there's only about 4,000 Democrats that have requested a ballot. The majority of everyone else doesn't even know there's an election. So I really could use the help. I got 4 weeks to pull this off, and I have 8,500 homes yet. I still have to lit drop to. So if there's somebody who wants to help get Democrats active and help the Democrats on the absentee ballot list, to help all these other candidates that are running for Congress and governor, I could use your help.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Diaz. Thank you. All right, and we're going to move into now the section of candidates that are all here running for Congress, District 10. I think first up we have Hueda Arif. I said that right. I know we practiced it right before, but I feel like I already got it wrong. But if you're ready, we're ready to hear from you.
That's all right. Thank you, Emily. Good evening, everyone. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here with you tonight. Thank you to the North Macomb NAACP, Pamela, Emily, London, the whole board. Really, you're doing amazing work, and I'm honored to be a member. It's also really special for me as a civil rights attorney and a longtime human rights activist, but a first-time candidate who has never done one of these forums before, that the NAACP is the first host of a candidates forum for this election. Thank you, and thank you to everyone tuning in. A little bit about me. My name is Hueda Arif, and I am running for Congress in Michigan's new 10th district. I am the daughter of working class immigrants. My parents came to this country when my mother was 9 months pregnant with me, the oldest of 5 children. Now I'm a mom of 2 young kids myself, so I know the daily challenges facing working people. Good jobs that pay a living wage. There are rising prices, housing insecurity, the cost of childcare going up, healthcare that people can't afford. My parents came to this country from Palestine, which is under Israeli military occupation. They left everything they know to give me and my siblings a chance at freedom and opportunity. And I am so grateful that my father found a union job with General Motors. I remember how hard he worked, not taking days off, not taking sick days, even though he really needed it. Through that hard work, my parents were able to provide for us. We didn't have a whole lot growing up, but we had enough. And importantly, I believed growing up that the sky was the limit. I could be whatever I wanted. I don't see that same opportunity available for our kids today. I know that people are working as hard as ever, and they can't make ends meet. I've had people telling me that they work 7 jobs. I don't even know how you do that. They work 70 or 90 hours a week, and they still don't feel secure in their homes. I'm running for Congress because, frankly, I'm really tired of seeing the rich get richer while we're told that there isn't enough money to invest in and uplift the rest of us. I'm running because Michigan families want and deserve good, well-paying jobs that allow them to support themselves and their families. Quality schools, we need safe neighborhoods, clean drinking water, a healthy environment. We have too few elected officials fighting for the people. I fought for human rights for most of my adult life. Shortly after graduating college, I accepted a job working for a US peacebuilding organization in Jerusalem. A few months after I arrived, the Palestinian Intifada broke out, and unarmed Palestinian demonstrators were being shot dead in the streets, while the mainstream media and the world's politicians were blaming the Palestinians for daring to rise up for their freedom. I saw flagrant human rights abuses before me, children dragged from their beds by armed soldiers in the middle of the night, unarmed civilians being shot dead in the streets, homes demolished, children thrown out into the streets, family farms bulldozed, and more. I took action, and I co-founded an organization, a global volunteer organization dedicated to standing up for human rights and against government oppression. In 2004, that organization was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Years later, I led efforts to challenge Israel's unlawful blockade on 2 million people trapped in an open-air prison in Gaza by organizing a flotilla of 7 ships carrying 700 people and 10,000 tons of aid to challenge a government blockade. That is the kind of global coalition building and action that I have taken, just some of it in my past, to stand up against human rights abuses. Now I'm raising my kids, my 2 children, in the district in which I was raised. And prior to launching my campaign, I worked for a civil rights law firm in Detroit. I see human rights abuses around me every single day. Not the same that I saw in Palestine, but people are being abused here and they're being denied their rights. Last month, my children and I joined Macomb County's Walk for Warmth because too many of our neighbors can't even afford to heat their homes in Michigan winters. When you have to decide between heating your home or putting food on the table, you are being denied. When you have to ration your medicine, you are not free. When you can't get the medical care you need, your rights are denied. When you work 70 hours a week and can't afford a roof over your head, you are not free. When you send your kids to school in the morning and have to worry whether they'll come home at the end of the day, you are not free. Our policies do not center people and they do not center human rights. And I think it's enough. We need people making policy who actually care about people. We must put people, human rights, and civil rights at the center of our policy making, whether foreign policy or domestic policy, overseas or right here at home. That is why I am running, and I am asking for your support. Together, we can make government and the economy work for all of us, not just the wealthy and well-connected. Together, we can make this country all that we want it to be and all that it can be. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. All right, next up is Henry Yanez. If you are ready, we're ready to hear from you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of this group. And I do appreciate the fact that you led off by saying you are a nonpartisan organization. I think that's very important. That I think a lot of us spend a lot of time in partisan companies, so this is very important. So a little bit about my background. I grew up in Madison Heights. My parents were children of the Great Depression. My dad was a welder at Ford Motor Company for 48 years. A union member. Matter of fact, my dad went to work at Ford the very first year of the UAW. And it was because of the UAW, because of unions, that we didn't have to go without health care. If I needed dental care, I got it. If I needed eyeglasses, I got them. We were very fortunate as a working family to have those benefits. And not everybody has those benefits today. You see many retirees being forced onto 401ks, and they're at the mercy of Wall Street. And who knows when the next crash is going to come if they're going to lose half their retirement savings. We have people who are insecure with their health care. I hear politicians talk about access to health care. That means those politicians are okay with some people not having health care. I am not. For me, everybody deserves health care. I remember in 2012, I was knocking doors, running for state rep. I guess I should go back and give you a little bit of my background. I'm currently on the Sterling Heights City Council, and prior to that, I served 3 terms in the Michigan State Legislature as a state representative. And prior to that, I was a firefighter paramedic for the city of Sterling Heights. But I remember knocking those doors, one particular door, and the gentleman who answered that just looked despondent. And you know, he told me that he got called back to work. He had worked for Chrysler, but he was a Chrysler employee. When they called him back to work, he was a contractor, and he got his wages cut. He got his benefits cut. They didn't know how they were going to make ends meet. And it was right then and there I realized that the people of Macomb County, the people of my community, are the kind of people that are the first to feel a bad economy and the last to recover from it. And this is where they need a break. They need to get a break from their local government, their state government, their federal government. Right now, they are the people who carry the load when it comes to making this country work. And unfortunately, we have leaders and politicians that can't even get the low-hanging fruit right. They can't get the basics right. And I cannot tolerate that. As a firefighter, our job was to solve problems and solve them immediately. And that's what I've done as a state legislature. I am the only person in this race that has been both a local legislator and a state legislator. I know how to do the job. I can do the job in Washington on day one. I will be effective on day one. I am excited every single day that I wake up, knowing that I have an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. Like the lives of Idling Garver, who was going to be thrown out of her house because she was tax delinquent, only to find out that she had been being scammed. And we went into her house and we straightened out her situation. We worked with the county and we made sure that Idling got to stay in her home. I kept the wife of a Vietnam veteran in their home, the veteran who had a stroke. And we went down to the VA. I talked to the social worker, I talked to the doctor at the VA. And I made sure that his status was changed from 70% disabled to 100% disabled so she could qualify for the taxes. The veterans, 100%, veterans who are 100% disabled get their property taxes waived. We are proactive in the community. I'm passionate about the environment. I work with Clinton River Watershed Council doing cleanups. I volunteer for Meals on Wheels. Today was my Meals on Wheels day, making sure that seniors get a hot, nutritious meal. And I work within the community. I am a public servant. I was born a public servant. I've lived the life of a public servant. And now I'm asking folks to send me to Washington so I can continue this life of public service on your behalf. It's about our community. It's not about me. It's not about a goal. It's not about proving a point. This is about you and our community being a better place to live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry, for sharing. All right, I think next up we have Angela Rogansey.
Thank you, Emily. I really appreciate everyone's time. And thank you, Pamela and the NAACP for inviting me to speak this evening. My name is Angela Rogansey, and I am running to be your next member of Congress from the 10th Congressional District. When I was growing up, I saw my parents get locked into some very difficult positions, many times without the ability or even the option to choose a different path. They struggled to cope with addiction and the loss of a child. And because of this upbringing, I've never been able to stand by and watch anyone be taken advantage of, especially people with the fewest resources and the least amount of agency and self-determination over their lives, and particularly lower income and working class families. The journey from my hometown of Clinton Township to Warren, which is where I live now, was a lot longer than the 6 short miles that separate them. Between Clinton Township and Warren, I went to college at Michigan State University. I lived in Chicago, where I worked in community mental health, homeless services, affordable housing, and I went to graduate school at DePaul University. Then moved to California and worked at a nonprofit where I helped folks overcome barriers to employment and gain valuable workforce training to find steady employment and living wage jobs. And every place I have lived, I've wanted to be a real part of the community to help it grow and become stronger than it was before. And above all, I wanted to serve the people who live there. And through this, I have discovered a tremendous love for connecting people from all walks of life with the resources they need to make their lives better. In 2012, I made the decision of my life, and one I could not be prouder of, which is I moved home to be closer to my sister, who at the time was a single mother, to my 3-year-old niece, who is working full-time. My sister was making minimum wage, really doing everything possible she could to support my niece. My parents, still living in my childhood home in Clinton Township, were getting older, and I knew I didn't want to miss any more holidays or birthdays and family reunions. So I packed up my life in California and moved across the country and came back home to Michigan. And I settled in Warren, where I have lived for nearly 10 years. I chose Warren and Macomb County because it's home, and also because my sister and my niece live just a mile from me. And I have the tremendous opportunity of being a very important part of her life, and the privilege of taking her to gymnastics and attending band recitals and a variety of other things. In Michigan, I worked as an executive director of a nonprofit focused on helping to ensure equity on the playground, and that children, particularly low-income children, had the opportunities that all of their peers had, regardless of income level, to learn valuable social and emotional skills and pro-social skills on the playground. I've gotten to know communities across Michigan through this work, and I'm proud of the positive impact that it has had on kids and the families that we served. I didn't just come home to help my family or to be closer to my family. I really came home to help all of our families. That's why I've decided to run for Warren City Council in 2019. With everything that was going on in our nation at the time, I couldn't sit on the sidelines of our democracy anymore. I needed to stand up and serve. So I spent 7 months knocking on many doors, wearing out the soles of numerous pairs of shoes along the way. And I'm grateful for an incredible team of folks who supported me along that journey. That November, the people of Warren chose me to represent them. And 2.5 years later, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about all of the conversations I've had, both with folks at their front door, but also the folks that I get to serve on a regular basis through Warren City Council. I'm running for Congress here in the 10th district because when you see people in need, you roll up your sleeves and make yourself part of the solution. My years of working in nonprofits has led me to roll up my sleeves many times. And particularly in 2019, when I ran for city council, where every week we continue to focus on how to improve our community. I am the daughter of the 10th district. I'm born and raised here. I love this community. I found myself here. I found my passions, and I've returned home to serve the community I know best. We need a representative who understands what life is actually like for our families, small businesses, and the children here that we are here to protect and serve. Someone who will fight for all of us. It has been my job to serve families like they're my own for 15 years. And I will fight for your family just as hard as I have fought for my own and for the hundreds of folks that I have served along the way. I will be that kind of congresswoman, and my professional and personal service to my community reflects that. I am ready to roll up my sleeves and get about finding solutions to some pretty important problems that we face. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Angela. All right, next up we have Rhonda Powell.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Pamela, and to the rest of the NAACP for this invitation. I'm excited to be here and to share with this awesome group of candidates and folks listening. So I am Rhonda Powell. I am a 4th generation resident of Macomb County. Like many folks, my great-grandparents came to Macomb County in search of better jobs and resources, housing, just better accommodations for families. And actually, they settled here in Macomb County. They were farmers. So, being able to spread out, there's a lot of folks that could identify with that coming up from southern states. I also think that, some of what really has shaped me as an individual, I have to talk about my grandfather. My grandfather was instrumental in my life. I grew up with a single mom who did her best. She was lovingly known as the lunch lady in the cafeteria, but I spent so much time with my grandfather. My grandfather was a bishop. He retired from Pontiac General Motors, and he was a bishop in one of the local churches. What I learned from him is leave people better off than you found them, or leave them alone. That is something that I have carried with me throughout my service. And for over 20 years in serving as a director and running nonprofit organizations and running various government departments at the state and local levels. I have served some of the state's most vulnerable populations during that time. I have been the person that politicians call to navigate constituents' most difficult challenges. And I've seen firsthand the folks that we're leaving behind, folks in the military who, dedicate their life to serving this country and come back only to find themselves in a homeless shelter. Those are the folks that, I made sure it was important to me. It's always going to be important to me to make sure we can help folks navigate some of their most difficult challenges. But I'm running for Congress because it shouldn't be that difficult for them to navigate these challenges. They shouldn't have to go and call this person and that department, this politician, to try and navigate services that they literally, some have paid for and their families are trying to navigate. They've paid for it with their lives, a life of service. I know exactly what folks have dealt with because I've been the one helping them to navigate these challenges. Also, the folks that are being left behind right now, there is no question for me what these challenges are. I mean, COVID exacerbated many of our inequities in this society that unfortunately I knew was there all along. Some of these challenges I faced myself. So I have no question. I don't have to look and ask anybody else what some of them are. I grew up in public housing. Our friends, our peers in school, we had a kinship through struggle. Those are the individuals, the children that suffered with, anemia. They had sickle cell. They had epilepsy. I saw firsthand the challenges. I was that Head Start kid that the bus was coming to pick up or that my family had to walk up to the school. So I am running for Congress because it's time for us to stop leaving people behind. It's time for us to change the prevailing narrative that says that some of us have to live invisibly in this community. No, we all deserve a voice. We all deserve to be seen and heard. I have done that for over 20 years, and I'm asking for your support because I believe I'm the person who understands what policies at the federal level does when, by the time the state and the local levels add their 2 cents, they have devastating consequences for the people who they affect the most. It's time for their voices to be heard, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. And real quick, before we go to Carl, I saw someone in the chat. They're ready to vote today, it seems like. Let me just encourage you to A, stick around and listen to every candidate because they deserve that time. We invited them here. B, this is really meant to be a starting point. You can't learn everything in 5 minutes. Please go to their websites, follow them on their social media, get on their email list. Do that for all the candidates, not just the one that you think is your favorite, because you're going to learn a lot about them between now and election day. And today is really step 1. Step 2 or point 2 is if you live in Congressional District 10, you should still care about Congressional District 9 because what they are doing is still going to impact Macomb County. And that goes for the state representatives here as well. We're all part of Macomb County, and whoever wins in 10 is going to be colleagues with who's ever in 9. So we really need to care about the collective body that's representing Macomb. So please keep that in mind and stick around until the end. So with that, we're going to go to Mr. Marlinga if he's ready. Just got to unmute you.
And I'm unmuted. Okay, thank you. Look at January 6th, 2021, we nearly lost our republic. It was not only the damage to the Capitol building, which can be repaired. It was not only the horrific deaths, which can never be repaired, but aside from the crazy people and the buffalo horns and the war paint and the vile threats, there was an insidious threat inside the White House where lawyers were drafting plans for the Vice President of the United States to take the election away from the people. Whether it is Angela or Huwaida or Rhonda or Henry or me, one of us has to be there in 2024 and in 2025 to make sure that there is a majority of Democrats in the House of Representatives, because if not, the vile plans that the then president's team were trying to hatch could actually cause a hijacking of an election and the wrongful takeover of the government of the United States. It's no exaggeration. That's what these people planned before. We have to understand that they are that evil to still be planning it now. And so we need to have a Democratic majority. Now, the good thing about the five of us here is that we've all pledged, all for one and one for all. Whoever comes out of the primary is going to have everybody's absolute support, because there's more important things than winning an election. We have a country to save. We have a democratic process to make sure it continues into the decades in the future. And I can't believe this, that I would ever be saying this as a realistic issue in an election. The fabric of our government stands ready to be torn apart by people who don't care about the Constitution, only care about their own ego, only care about their own power, and they are willing to do anything in order to win the presidency again, and we have to stop them, and one of us will be there to stop them. Now, I don't want to just concentrate on that, but it is obviously the most important thing that we have to realize, that we have to win this seat. In terms of issues, we all want good jobs. Every candidate says that every election. We all mean it. I've articulated a plan where we can have new and better jobs. We can reindustrialize Michigan and the United States, Macomb County, bring new, good-paying union jobs to Macomb County if we make new products. What are the new products we can make? Well, the new products for which there is demand on the world scene are the environmental products that will clean our environment, protect our air, protect our water. Things like heat pumps to heat our homes and our industrial plants, things like charging stations to fast charge the cars so that electric vehicles become a reality, because people won't worry about the distance anxiety of running out of power. All kinds of chips, all kinds of devices that will end up causing us to be able to not only have a new green industrial revolution, but to save the environment of the planet, which it's a scientific fact is at jeopardy if we continue to burn fossil fuels at the rate that we are doing. And the other thing that we can do by turning the United States and Michigan and Macomb County and Oakland County into industrial hubs for a new green way of fueling our energy needs is that we will get away from the oil and gas, which allows undemocratic regimes like Russia and Iran to terrorize the world with their economic power because they happen to be sitting on a lot of oil and gas. And so by finally taking the environmental movement and combining it with the yearning that we've always had for a full employment economy, we can combine these two ideas. Some people say that, no, we can't do it, but that's a false choice. We can both have a booming economy and we can save the environment. And the last thing I want to say again for all of us, Angela and Huwaida and Rhonda and Henry and myself, is that each and every one of us are just miles ahead and way above of our common opponent, Mr. James. Mr. James, I watched one of these insipid, meaningless, say-nothing commercials again in which he's talking about the need for education. What does that mean? That he's going to be a cheerleader, that he's going to stand outside the building and say, wow, we need education? No, we need somebody who's going to commit to to smaller class sizes, better teacher pay, good aid to education. We need Democrats who have real issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Okay, and so we're gonna move now to Congressional District 9 candidates. And on Mr. Marlinga's note, I just want to reemphasize, we did invite all the candidates that were filed. If someone's not here that you know is running, it's because they chose not to respond. So thank you to everybody that did respond and taking the time to be here with us tonight. So I believe next up we have Brian J. running for US Congressional District 9.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian J. And a lot of you might not know me, but I want to explain who I am. I grew up in Macomb. I'm a first generation American on my father's side. My father came here from Poland to escape basically a lot of the effect of the Nazi regime during that time. I was the first one in my family to attend a university or college. And from that, and to understand me, you have to know a little bit of my background. I got a full academic ride to Oakley University. I became an RA. I became a student leader on that campus. And during that time, I worked with a lot of marginalized groups and different individuals. I was the first white male to ever win the Keeper of the Dream, the Martin Luther King Keeper of the Dream Award that was presented by his widow, his son, and many others, recognized for breaking down cultural barriers. From there, I went to law school. I was a student leader in law school. I sat on the boards of multiple organizations, and I graduated in the top quarter of my class and got hired into one of the best law firms in the world from my parents' basement. That is who I am, and that is how I fight. I worked at this law firm for a while, and I had the luxury of working with some individuals that worked in President Clinton's administration, co-counsel on different matters. From that point in my career, I went on and I went forward. And I've been a lawyer now for almost just about 16 years. I've worked at every level and every facet. I've worked at some of the best law firms in the country. But really what I'm doing right now, and some of the work I'm doing is working with individuals that are just above the poverty level. I'm representing them at a discounted rate through the State Bar of Michigan. And that's what I'm passionate about. And that's what I'm about. And just like President Obama, who worked at some big firms and then did civil rights work, I'm passionate about helping people. And that's why I'm running for Congress. And that's why I decided to do this. And the biggest reason was when I decided, and when I found out I was going to be a father a few years ago, I had to stand up because the travesty of what was in the White House, what was going on with Donald Trump, and I had to fight it. I grew up in Sterling Heights. I'm filed in the 9th. And I chose to file in the 9th, and it was the 10th, but now it's the 9th. And I chose to file against Lisa McClain because I believe that we need someone in Congress that fights for the people. I'm fighting for a living wage. I'm fighting for individuals that have health care. I'm fighting to protect marginalized individuals. Lisa McClain has voted yes 6 times. She has voted with the President of the United States 9% of the time. We need someone in Congress that will vote and be able to work with the White House. Right now, we do not. How will I work with Macomb? I was born in Macomb. I was born and raised in Macomb County. It was part of me. And the people are part of me. And that is how I am. And that's how I always will be. My platform is, it's not simplistic, it's deep. But really, I mean, we need someone in Congress that's going to protect, someone that's going to create jobs, someone that's going to fight the nonsense. Donald Trump is coming here on Saturday. Donald Trump is doing, he's going to rile up more hate and more division. You know what they put? They put me in the advertisement for Donald Trump, and they picked out that I put he and him. So right there, it shows you what Donald Trump is doing to this nation. I get attacked the moment I say I'm a Democrat sometimes because of what this man has done to America. I want to run for Congress because I don't want my son raised in that country. I want my son raised in a country where everyone is accepted and everyone is understood, and we protect these individuals. I'm going to fight for healthcare. I would love to see a single payer healthcare system. I'm going to fight and defend the ACA in the meantime, because Donald Trump will eliminate everything. Donald Trump will eliminate it, and 20 million people will lose their healthcare. There are so many facets of what Lisa McClain is based on Donald Trump, and I am fighting for the people because they deserve someone that grew up where they are from, that know the issues, that know what they're fighting, and cares about working class and rural individuals, and basically all individuals in different facets and different areas. I've worked at every level, but really what I'm doing and what my passion is making sure that people understand that the working class, the Democratic Party, was the party of the working class. And we need to reiterate that I want to focus and bring forward the vote and take away some of the hate and division that Donald Trump has caused in this nation. And that's, really what I want to touch on. I'm going to put my webpage, but I appreciate everyone for listening. And, I hope I can get some of your support in the future, and I wish everyone the best. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Brian. All right, before I introduce Joel, he's the lone wolf Republican here, so he probably feels like he's in the Shark Tank right now. But one of the things I want to reiterate, and I know we've talked about this in some of our executive committee meetings, and I know we've talked about it. I work a lot with the Michigan Parent Alliance for Safe Schools and working with schools around the state, is a return to civility in this country. The way that people are talking to each other when they disagree has gotten out of hand. And I think, disagreeing is normal, but disagreeing in a sense that is disrespectful and doesn't get anything done has to stop. We need real solutions, not just manufactured anger. And that's what we're seeing a lot of. And so I'm really excited to hear what everybody wants to accomplish. And I hope we see some real solutions. But a return to civility is really key. So Joel, I hope you don't feel like you're in the Shark Tank, but I'm gonna pass it to you now, Joel. And you gotta unmute too. I don't think we can hear you. We had his audio earlier. Can anybody hear him?
No, we cannot.
Had you earlier during the testing time.
Am I here now?
There you
Okay,
go.
yeah, we can
We
hear you
got
now.
you.
I wanted to thank them, NAACP. And I know I don't feel like I'm in the Shark Tank being the only lone Republican here. You all might not like this, but I am a Trump supporter. I do believe in the 4 years Trump was in office, unemployment being the lowest for all walks of life. All walks. I like the $2 an hour gas. I wouldn't be sitting here today if I didn't have to pay $52 to fill up my Ford Escort. $52. That's the only reason why I'm here. Now a little bit about myself. My name is Joel Needham. I'm running in Michigan District 9. Not a lot I can really say. I don't know. It's just being here and listening to all the Democrats cut up Republicans. That is division to me. I was a Democrat. I was an alternate delegate for Hillary Clinton in 2008 in Texas. Of course, I didn't have to go. Obama won. But I became a Republican when the Democrat Party started moving too far left for me. I am a middle guy. I will try to work with everybody down the middle of the line. Right now, Democrats own Congress. And even in the Senate, you can't get things done because it's division amongst your own party. You already got the House. So talking about we got to take the House, you already got the House. You pass everything that you wanted in the House and it gets stuck up in the Senate. And if the Republicans take back the Senate this year and the House, everything will get blocked up in the Senate again, because the Democrats will use that racist filibuster to stop all the agenda. And then if the agenda does get through, Biden is guaranteed to veto it. So it's really not about getting legislation through, because it's not going to happen. Republicans most likely are going to take at least the House. Senate, and still, no, Democrats can still hold on the Senate. There's a good possibility of that. But if Republicans take the House, either one, Democrat or Republican, they're going to use the filibuster in the Senate, and anything that passed by Republicans is going to get vetoed by Biden. So this is all about fighting for your party and for control of Congress. Can't change the White House. Biden's there till 2024. So the reason why I am here is to help the Republicans take the House, at least the House. We got to put Democrats can have the Senate. We have the House. We got to work down the middle to pass legislation. The legislation that Nancy Pelosi puts out is so far left, no Republican can vote for it. And then when it's a simple majority in the House, it goes to the Senate. We use a filibuster. You guys call it racist, even though you guys use it 300 times against Trump. That is division. And that's why I'm running. I right now, I'm a mechanic. My full-time job right now is in Lake Orion at a mechanic shop. And I hear about everybody who voted for Biden and voted for Trump. I got Biden voters came in there regretting it just because of the gas prices. We have to get the economy back in shape. We got to get gas. You get gas prices down, everything else comes down with it. Your meat, chicken, vegetables, anything that goes to the store, anything that gets delivered, you get the gas prices down 25, 40%. So does everything else in the stores. And if you want to all talk about helping the little people, that's how you help the little people, because the rich people can afford their gas. They can afford their drivers. $52 to fill an Escort. That's insane. Now, whether I win or whether I lose, if I do win, I'm willing to work down the middle. If I lose, probably end up paying $52 more per gallon for the next couple of years. So you all have fun with it. And I hope to see you on the trail. I hope to have more debates. And I really appreciate the NAACP for hosting this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. All right. And then last but not least, we have Kelly Noland running for State Representative, District 63. Go ahead and unmute, Kelly.
Thank you, Emily. I'd also like to thank the Northern Macomb NAACP, especially Pam and Miss Emily here for hosting this event and bringing all of our colleagues together in a wonderful discussion. If you're not familiar with me, I'm an Army veteran nurse. I've lived in Macomb my whole life. I grew up on a farm. And I live in a semi-rural district that I'll be running for. And it's a new district with an open seat. And it includes East China, China Township, Algonac, Anchor Bay, Cotterville, Ira Township. I mean, it goes all the way down to Harson's Island. And the area that I would like to represent has many issues locally. One of them, especially in Algonac, they were granted a $2 million grant for cleanup for PFAS contaminations from a dump there, which continues to be an issue in our Great Lakes, which is something that needs to be urgently addressed. And we still need to have funds to continue to be allocated locally for these issues. We also are having issues with storm drainage. And I was at an Anchor Bay meeting, an Algonac city meeting, and they had stated that their clean water pumping station could only handle like 2.5 million gallons. And last year it went 7 million gallons. So there's an obvious issue that needs to be addressed. There was a SAW grant made, they've done studies and they're working on it. This also needs to be done throughout the district because we are affiliated and very close with Lake St. Clair. It's a tourism industry predominantly in my district, and that's why we need to pay especially close attention to our Great Lakes, our drinking water, and our infrastructure. We have bridges that are falling apart. We need federal dollars to come our way to help with these infrastructure needs. Also goes without saying broadband needs. And also there was a study that was done that they're now finding microplastics in the bloodstreams of human beings because of the pollution. That should be very concerning to all of us. Studies need to be done to help clean up the pollution in Lake St. Clair. Also, besides PFAS, we have other chemicals that are coming in from Canada from dumps that need to be regulated. And I also think that the Democratic Party should work harder in the rural areas. And my meaning is that I'm going to be running a booth for the Bayrama Fish Fly Festival, which is June 22nd through the 26th here in fabulous New Baltimore. And what that does is it brings about many people from different communities. And I'm going to be renting a voter registration booth to put out the word that there is a Democratic presence here and that we want to register our voters and let them know that we have not forgotten you in the rural areas. Also, I believe that high schools, all high schools should offer a 2-year apprenticeship program for kids that are not inclined to go to college or cannot go to college due to financial circumstances, because our apprenticeship programs, like our electricians, our heat, HVAC guys, plumbers, they're having a real difficulty filling jobs in their field. And these are good paying union jobs that are going by the wayside because we don't have a program in high school to give a kid a 2-year certificate to get him a good job as soon as he gets out. that is something that needs to be explored in my district, and something I feel very strongly about. And I would like to move forward. We need to move forward as a country. January 6th was a terrible event. I won't get into it about how I feel about it, but it was terrible. But we need to move forward. January 6th committee is doing their job. People are getting indicted. People are being subpoenaed. And as a party, we have to have a two-party system to be healthy. And if we don't, our democracy is not going to work. So I'm the type of person that, with my background in nursing, I'm a people person. I've worked with people in all kinds of distressing situations, and I can deal with it, which means I will be able to work across the aisle with my constituents, other representation, with Republicans, whoever, it does not matter. I will work across the aisle because our government needs to function properly again. And that's how I feel about it. We need to move forward, and we need to be civil to one another. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you allowing me to speak tonight, Emily, Pamela. Thank you.
Of course. All right. Thank you everyone for sharing. We are going to move into the Q&A portion, which I'm sure will be very interesting to hear, them answer some of the things we really care about, especially how it pertains to Macomb County. I am going to pass it off to London in a moment. London is a chair of our communications committee, and I know she's going to go over how she would like the Q&A section to go. So London, take it away.
Thank you, Emily. Hello, everyone. My name is London. And so we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping. So the way that I want to do it this evening is that I would like for each of you to put your question in the chat if you are able, and so that we can keep track and go in order for the questions. And I will go through and once I see the question, I will call on you to give you an opportunity to ask your question. I want to say that I want to keep the questions from 30 seconds to a minute, no longer than 1 minute. You get one opportunity to ask a question, and then we got to go around so everyone can have their opportunity. And then if we can loop back, we'll come back to you later, but everyone will have a chance to talk first. And for the candidates, for your answers, we would like for you to keep your answers to 3 minutes. And I will also say that I appreciate everyone being here, and I know that we're all passionate about so many issues, but please make sure that your questions are respectful to everyone here. And if they are not, if they get disrespectful, I will mute you. So I just want you to know that ahead of time. Okay, so go ahead and start putting your questions in the chat. And I will start calling on folks to ask their question. Okay, so Jimmy, I see that you have your question here. Please go and ask your question.
Hi, thanks for organizing this. So last week, the Democratic Party members passed a resolution calling on Dana Nessel to investigate both Police Chief Shalide and the Shelby Township Police Department over what happened to the Shelby 5 protesters in October before the 2020 election. 2 of the Shelby 5, including myself, will be having our preliminary exam next week in District Court 41A in Shelby Township. And I was wondering if Judge Marlinga and the other District 10 candidates can share their thoughts concerning the civil rights issue. And additionally, do the candidates believe that Dana Nessel should investigate? And if you are personally willing to call tonight for all the charges against the protesters to be immediately dropped. Thank you.
Mr. Marlinga, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. Look, at having just been a judge, it's awfully difficult for me to talk about cases that are pending. Because there's just a good thing about our legal system that we don't try cases in the press. I know from talking to lawyers who are involved in the defense of the defendants that there are serious issues which can be explored in pretrial motions, and I think they will be. But, and again, am I Am I sympathetic to free speech rights? Of course I am. But I don't want to, at this time, try to start trying that case in the press. I've been in contact with the lawyers who have asked my opinion about a couple of issues about political speech, free speech being a civil right, and that therefore is it appropriate to have an investigation by either the U.S. authority or the Attorney General. Of course there is. Of course it is. But I'm not going to say what the results of that investigation should be, because then we're doing what I said we shouldn't be in the press. There is a legitimate forum. There are judges who are going to decide this on the basis of the law. And there certainly is a chance that the case could be dismissed at the preliminary exam level. There certainly is a chance that it could be dismissed at the close of the prosecution's proofs at trial. I happen to think personally that one of the best things that could happen is that after the horrific summer and all of the shrill voices on both sides, that it would be a good thing if there could be a resolution of this case, which didn't see anybody having a criminal record, anybody going to jail. Let's, as we go into the future, talk about free speech and make sure that everybody has that chance. One thing I will say, look at, I know that when I used to drive home on Hall Road, the people carrying the Trump banners were almost into the first lane on Hall Road. I didn't mind that because it's an exercise of free speech. They had their candidate. They wanted to say the Shelby police never interfered with anything that they did. When people were talking about Black Lives Matter, the Shelby police came out in full riot gear uniform. It just seems to me to be disproportional. But other than making that comment, I don't want to say anything more to try to make it seem that I, as an ex-circuit judge, am trying to tell the prosecutor or the judges what to do. That's not my place. And so I'm a free speech type of guy, and I hope that the First Amendment prevails in this whole controversy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marlinga. And before we go on to the next candidate to answer, what I'd like for you to do, instead of putting the question in the chat for everyone, send it directly to me in the chat. You can just click under my name, London, send it to me so that I can keep track of each of the questions and then call on you. Also keep in mind that you know, this is a forum and we may not be able to allow for everyone to ask a question, but it's also a good opportunity for you to follow up directly with the candidate. So I'm going to stop there and move on. Is there another candidate from the district that would like to answer that question?
I can.
London? Oh, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Wait, Ralph. I can just briefly reiterate. I know Jimmy and other forums or meetings you've asked this question, and I have said more than once that I support the charges being dropped. So just go on the record again saying that.
Thanks. I would like to just chime in as well. Much like Huwaida said, you know, I've already said that I agree with the, I believe the child charges should have never been filed and definitely should be dropped. And I think we need to go as hard for everybody's free speech and not just some. Maybe police should not be able to unilaterally decide how protests are narrowed down. This is why we need community policing and some citizen boards to help, you know, mediate these things, because it is clearly inequitable from one community to the next.
London?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, yes, Jimmy has asked this question at many different forums and we've answered it. I was part of the North Macomb Democratic Club that we passed a resolution asking for all the charges to be dropped. I personally crafted a cover letter because I felt so passionate about what happened in a much bigger scale. I was one of the people that marched down M59 when those 3 high school girls organized this huge Black Lives Matter march. It's passions were very high and rightfully so at the time. But we really have to come together, right? We have to come together as a community. Our police are there to protect us. And if they break the law or they overuse their powers, then that definitely needs to be investigated. But this is a failure of leadership at the top in Shelby Township, not the rank and file officers. It's a failure of leadership at the top. And I know that some of the leaders in Shelby Township wanted to fire the police chief, but unfortunately they couldn't get enough votes to do that. I call upon Prosecutor Lucido to drop these charges. Let's heal the wounds of this. Let's learn from it, and let's grow together as a community and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
So this is Angela Rogansey. Jimmy had asked this question prior, and I told him I would do a little bit more research before I responded. And Jimmy, I absolutely support calling for an investigation and doing whatever I could to support as an elected official, but also as someone running for office. So just wanted to make sure I was on the record for that as well.
Thank you, Angela. And so let's move on to the next question. And Pamela Alexander, I'll call on you. And please let us know who you'd like to direct your question to when you ask your question as well. You have to unmute.
Okay, so I would like for my question to be directed toward those who are running for Congress. Okay, so my question is, what will be your platform to ensure all children are safe in schools, including access to resources to support the prevention against bullying and the mental and emotional wellness of children in school?
Thank you.
London?
Angela, is that you?
Yes, can I go first?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking this question. I spent 8 years as an executive director of a nonprofit that worked in primarily elementary schools, but K-8 schools, and I'm incredibly passionate about equity in education. The organization that I work for helped to ensure that children had the opportunity to play. Many folks don't know that recess is not a required part of the school day, and that low-income students and students with behavioral challenges and students of color are often disproportionately impacted by a lack of play, after-school sports, and other resources that schools desperately need. And the organization that I worked for was a school-wide intervention around bullying and exclusionary behavior. And we had research to show that was effective when we partnered with schools across the state of Michigan. So one is at a federal level, ensuring there's increased funding for Title I for low-income schools, and that there's less restrictions around how schools use that funding to support additional resources for students who need it, including mental health, ensuring their emotional well-being, their physical safety, and ensuring that all children have access to basic things like play, reading, and appropriate size classrooms with support staff and well-trained folks while our teachers are taken care of. That is one of the primary vehicles for low-income schools. Folks don't realize that more than 55% of the state's children are coming from a low-income household. And there are a number of schools in our District 10 that need more resources. And I would be a fierce advocate for children and public education in DC. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And I'm just going to go around in order here. For District 10, I'm going to call on Hueda, if you would like to answer this question.
Sure, thank you. First of all, I think we need to, and I'm going to take it a little bit back because I think that we need to finally pass safe gun laws. That is one thing that frightens me every single day. And one of the reasons we cannot pass these laws is the corrupting influence of money in politics. So that needs to be one of the top issues that we address. Once we get the corrupting influence of money out of politics, then we can pass these sensible laws, including in response to this question, safe gun laws. In terms of preventing bullying and other mental behavior that affects the mental health of our children, it is deeply disturbing to me that I have heard from people, even my neighbors, about their kids being bullied and them telling the school, and the school's not taking enough action. There is no, unfortunately, federal laws against bullying, but we do need to, I agree with Angela, that we do need to increase resources to schools to ensure that that the quality of your education in public schools specifically is not dependent on your zip code. So including increasing funding to our public schools so that there is equity, passing safe gun laws. And one thing also that goes back to safety that I think is very important and is making sure also that we're doing the infrastructure repairs necessary to make sure that all our schools have safe drinking water. And there is a lot to be done. It starts on the federal level with making sure that under-resourced schools have these resources again, so that the quality of the education and the mental health and other support that our children need is not dependent on your zip code or how much money your parents make.
Thank you, Huwaida. And so for candidates, you can just raise your hand and I'll call on you. And I think I saw Carl Malinga, I saw your hand go up, so please go forward.
Yeah, look, I'll keep this short. I touched on it before. I think that the best thing that the federal government could do, there are a lot of things we can do on the state level, but the best thing that candidates for Congress can do is pledge to have a really effective, massive federal aid to education to enable the states to have classroom sizes, which are such that you would have 8, 9, 10 students per teacher. The smaller the class, the more individual attention the kids get, the more it's impossible for bullies to have their way because everybody's together in the same pods and nobody gets left out. If you have a class of 25, 30 people, sure, you can form cliques, people can be in the back. And so, I mean, there are a lot of things that can be done, but the one thing that the federal government can do is make it possible to have the class sizes small enough so that the children get individual attention. And also, I think it was Huwaida who mentioned it, is that, look, education should be fun. Learning at that age is the most fun thing that we can do. Why do we have a system which squeezes the fun out of it? Let's have recess, let's have small classes, let's make it a fun. We can only do that if the classes are small enough to be able to have that individual attention.
Thank you, Carl. We're going to hear from Henry, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, so I'll make this really quick. So I agree with everybody else so far. And when it comes to the federal government, it really is about funding. The control should not come from Washington, D.C. The control really should be at the local level, because the school districts in the Detroit metropolitan area aren't the same as the school districts in Gladwin or, you know, a smaller community, whether it's in Michigan or some other state. We need to make sure that that federal funding gets back to the local community with some guidelines, but we have to make sure that the local community who knows what their key problems are and how to solve those problems, we need to make sure they have those tools to do it. So I want to make that point. And the other point I want to make is, instead of spending money on magnetometers, the kids have to walk through security getting into their school. Maybe what we should do is take time to reinstitute the Brady Bill and expand it, so these weapons of mass destruction, these assault weapons, aren't going into schools and other buildings and killing our kids when they should be in there learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. And so, oh, Rhonda, did you want to say something?
Yeah, me too.
And then quickly, just to say, you know, I definitely think we need to stop blaming children for adult problems. You know, we've looked at, we keep organizing everything around the children except the adults. You know, children learn bullying from adults. And so we have to provide a protective environment. We're coming up on the 23rd year of the Columbine massacre. I worked in education when that occurred. And, you know, we've got to get training for adults. We have to mandate training in equity and, you know, DEI training, because that a lot of the troubles are stemming from that, and how to deal with and recognize what kids deal with when they come to school, how to recognize these challenges. And I feel like if we can make sure that children, these budgets, stop cutting out the social worker, do the common sense stuff first before you call NASA. Maybe the social worker shouldn't be the first person to be cut from the budget. So we need to put some safeguards in place, keep the things in place that are there to protect children, start with that, and, and then call NASA.
Thank you, Rhonda. And Joel, was that you that said you
Yes,
wanted?
I did want to, yes.
Okay.
So this is a little near and dear to my heart. My son was bullied growing up. And we reported it. None never got done about it. My wife physically got in a fight with the coach because you know what his answer was? Boys will be boys. And a lot of Democrat policies, let's throw more money at it, more money at it. We already throw more money at our schools than any other country. It's not about the money. I do believe that teachers need to be held accountable. If a parent goes to and complains to a teacher about a bullying problem and it just falls through the cracks, that bully is going to keep getting bullied, keep getting the one getting bullied is going to keep getting bullied. And then that's when you start getting these mass shootings. They come to school with their guns, mostly parents' guns. They should be locked up and locked away. That's automatically. So I'm for that. Even as a Republican, gun safety is key. But when they fall through the cracks, that's when big things happen. And they're falling through the cracks because teachers and the bullier and the bullier's parents aren't being held accountable. And that's what happened with my son. So stop throwing money at problems and actually hold people accountable. And maybe when they find a consequence by not taking action, they will take action next time and maybe keep the people getting bullied from falling through the cracks. That's all I got to say on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Joel. Brian.
I just want to say something really quick. I previously ran as a Democratic candidate for the State Board of Education. So education is very close and dear to my heart. Right now, about 8% of funding comes from the federal level to school districts. Most of it comes from the state and local levels. So one of the things I wanted to do is try to initiate a program to design and implement more funding and put strings on it attached to redistribute to the school districts most in need, where the resources are needed for teacher retention and resources for mental health, resources for different developmental programs. And just, I'm glad to hear Joel say this, but I fully support Representative Slotkin's legislation. Oxford is in our district, and it is important that we keep gun safety and protect these children. And so we might disagree on some methods with funding, but I'm glad to hear that. So I care about children. I care about education. It is one of my passions, and I will fight in DC to make sure that every the resources and the necessity to open it up and help these students develop.
Thank you, Brian. And so we're going to move on to the next question, and that is from Tommy Barnes. Tommy, would you like to ask your question? If not, I can read it.
I'm assuming that my question is going to be somewhat controversial, so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. I've listened to everyone's speech, and I was Mr. Yanez. I was the front line of that march down protest with those three wonderful young women marching for equity in Macomb County. I was there for that. I was there for the Shelby 5 protests as well. So I've watched all of this develop in the last 24 months. Groups like the NAACP were founded on the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. My question is, if you become the candidate for the Democratic Party moving forward, why would I, as a person who believes in diversity, equity, and inclusion, vote for you over John James?
And these are for candidates in District 10?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Would anyone like to start us off in District 10? Henry?
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? Because I've heard this concerned about the makeup of Washington and so forth. My father's parents came from Mexico, through Texas to Tennessee and up to Michigan to work in my grandfather got a job at Ford Motor Company. And they were some of the immigrants who had to deal with stores and businesses that had signs that said no dogs or Mexicans allowed. Because I don't look Hispanic, because I don't look Mexican, all my life people have felt free to say disparaging things about Mexican people. And I found it incredibly hurtful. Those little brown people are my dad, my uncle, my grandmother, my aunts, my cousins. I don't have to be, I don't have to suffer the slings and arrows of great misfortune of the others to appreciate what they go through. And I think, frankly, that's the difference. People have asked all the time, why are you a Democrat? What's the difference between Democrats and Republicans? And my simple answer is empathy over sympathy. It doesn't have to happen to me. I can appreciate what you've gone through, even though I haven't gone through it myself. When you tell me that you have a bad experience, that you're suffering for about something, what have you, mental health, right? Discrimination, I believe you. And I know something needs to be done about it. And I've lived that life as a first responder, going into people's homes. When you're sick and you're dying, you never ask, are you liberal or conservative? Are you Democrat or Republican? You just hope somebody takes care of you. And that's what I've done. And I've done it as a state legislator. I do it currently right now as a municipal legislator. I've supported in our most recent budget DEI program. Certainly, I supported a social worker in our police department, because we know that people have issues, people suffer, and those issues and suffering need to be addressed. And that's what I'm going to do when I go to Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Any other candidates in the district? Carl, and then Rhonda.
Okay. First of all, I want to apologize to Angela. The recess thing belongs to you. I attribute it to Hoeda. You were the fun recess person. Okay, but back to on this question. I've not only talked the talk, I've walked the walk. When I was elected prosecutor in 1984, I discovered that there never was an assistant prosecuting attorney who was a person of color. I broke that barrier. I appointed over 12% of my personal appointments were African Americans, and I promoted them inside the office. I did the same with opportunities for women, increasing the staff from 4 out of 65 to about a 50-50, over a 50-50 mix when I left that office. I also, as a judge, was the judge who was most forthcoming in not only expungements, but in the use of the Holmes Youthful Trainee Act to give young Black men and women, but mostly young Black men, that chance to say that, look, at your life already as a person of color is going to be tougher in this society, which has high ambitions and goals, but doesn't live up to them all the time. If you go through life with a felony, it's going to cripple your ability to advance, to have the life that you want. And so I used the Holmes Youthful Trainee Act to make sure that people left my courtroom, maybe with a probationary sentence, but with the promise that if they ended that probationary sentence successfully, no crime would appear on their record. It was expunged. They went out into the community then without a record in the future. And lastly, in the last year, I worked my butt off. I lobbied the governor. You can ask anybody in the governor's office. Marlinga was the guy that was constantly saying, look, this is 2021 and now 2022. We still don't have an African-American on the circuit court bench or any countywide officials. And look at, we're only going to be on this earth for a short time. We got to do the most good that we can in the limited time that we have. For God's sakes, Governor, please appoint a person of color to the circuit court. And that dream came true. So that's the kind of spirit that I've done in the past. Civil rights, look at, I'm old. That's too bad. But one of the good things of being old is that I was there in the civil rights movement. I remember that. And I'm so upset that we haven't come to fruition for what Martin Luther King dreamed for us back then. But we still got to do it. It's got to be like our highest priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Rhonda.
Thank you. I agree. I mean, with Carl, I mean, I think that it is also time for a person of color, you know, because we've never had someone represent Michigan at the state or congressional level, represent Macomb County. I think it is time for that to change. And I also think, Tommy, to your question, I think there are many reasons not to support John James. We don't have much time for me to go down that list. But I will say, you know, people of color, Black people, we're not a monolith. We don't all vote the same. We don't all think the same. And, you know, we don't, contrary to maybe popular belief, we don't vote a straight ticket ballot. So, you know, it is important that people understand we take the time to see who it is that has represented our interest. And, you know, for folks that have, I mean, look at this race. You know, I'm excited to see women in this race. It's time to see people of color in this race. We are in this race because we have pulled a lever for too many years, and folks have, you know, at first opportunity, we're the thing that gets compromised. As soon as you get behind closed doors, the people we pull a lever for, women and people of color disappear pretty quickly. We're on the chopping block. So that is the reason, I think one of the main reasons, John James is clearly out for himself. This is an opportunity. I'm sure there will be another office after this one that he runs for. But, you know, the people that I grew up with in Macomb County, they are every race and creed. And unfortunately, for, you know, too often, this myth of scarcity has pitted folks against each other. People that we sat with for years. And, you know, I'm still a sports fan, but growing up, you know, we had our high school rivals, but that was it. You know, to this day, I can see someone and we can talk about, you know, oh, that game in 1985, but still, why are we, you know, allowing people to divide us based on race? And it's the people that are running away with the bag of money every time, pointing to say, hey, it's that person, it's that person who's I would hire you, but that person, no, we got to stop falling for it. That's the main reason why not to vote for John James, because we're just not falling for it this time.
Thank you, Rhonda. What I want to say is everybody's doing great on time, like staying within the time. I would like for the candidates, because we have so many questions, if you can keep your responses now down to about 90 seconds, if that's okay. Huwaida, you wanted to respond?
Yes, let me try to do that quickly. You know, I keep hearing about how racist Macomb County is and how it needs a certain kind of candidate. And I was literally told to my face that Macomb County is not ready for a progressive woman of color. And I don't accept that. I do agree that we need more representation. And I also, like Rhonda, am very proud to see that, you know, people of color and women are represented and are running in this race. And we're running, yes, it's important, you know, our experiences, but also what we plan to do and how we plan to fight and the things that we stand for. And I think, Tommy, it is, yeah, why would you vote for me if I'm the candidate and not John James? Precisely because of some of the things that we stand for. The policies that relate to you and that speak to the issues that you care about. My policies are all about uplifting poor, the working class, expanding the middle class, making sure that it's not just the wealthy few and the well-connected that are getting ahead here, while we hear about how this country is so free and anybody can get ahead. You can go as far as your dreams and your hard work will take you, but that's not the reality. It's not the reality in our schools. It's not the reality in our workplace. It's not the reality in our homes. And that needs to change. I am proud as a woman of color to be running in this race. Not that I'm running on my identity, but now I'm not African-American. I come from a Palestinian Arab background, and there's so many misconceptions about us. And some I hear from some people that I should minimize that, but I think that's so powerful and that's so beautiful. And that's what's so beautiful about this country. I think people do need to learn more about Palestinians and Arabs, and not that this race is about that, but also that I'm not going to hide that, because I believe that my story, my parents' story, we are the American story. And I hope that I can relate to a lot of people based on that. And then also fight so that other people in all communities feel that they have a place here. We're not a big melting pot, we're a beautiful mosaic. And on top of all of the things that I spoke about why I'm running, one of the reasons is also for my little girl, because she knows she's a girl of color, but that she knows that hopefully I'm paving the way for her and for other little girls to not feel that there is a barrier anywhere. So I'll take that. If people still want to say that to me, that a woman of color is not going to get far in Macomb County, well, I'm going to fight it. And I bet I'm going to prove them wrong.
Thank you,
We're
Hueda.
gonna do, Angela, we'll do you in a second. And I want to say just real quick, we will take a couple more. I know we said 8:30, but everyone's doing great. I do want to respect people's time since we said 8:30. So if there's any candidate that needs to hop off, because I know you are very busy people, please know that we thank you for coming tonight. And I also want to say that what we're doing tonight needs to become the normal. We should be engaging with the people that are running for office on a daily basis. So please don't let tonight be the last time you speak to these people. They have websites, they have social media, they have email addresses for a reason. They want to hear from you and they want to explain what they're about. So if you didn't get your question answered tonight, or if you have to hop off, please reach out to them. This has to become the normal. They work to represent us, and let them do that. So Angela, go ahead.
Thank you. I will take a very short amount of time. I echo many of the sentiments of my colleagues here. Like many have said, it's an honor to be with a pretty diverse group of candidates. And I think probably for a very long time, we've not seen 3 women in a race, and 2 of them being of color. And like many folks have said, and Tommy, to your point, I would ask you to look at John's policies and how they are going to support or hurt communities of color. I am a woman, and while my circle overlaps and my lived experience overlaps with Rhonda and Hueda as being women, I can never understand the Black experience in a way that it's lived. All I can do is be an advocate and an ally. And I have a proven track record of doing that and supporting folks and working alongside folks of color in my entire life. And I cannot have that lived experience, but yet will do my best to represent and support diverse communities, particularly the diverse community that is the 10th district. So that is why you should vote for me if I was the candidate over John. And I think policy alone, and whether or not John's policies actually would support the communities that I know that you care a lot about.
Thank you, Angela. And we have an additional question from Julie. Julie Allward, would you like to ask your question? And this question is for everyone.
Hi, thank you all for attending tonight. My name is Julie Allward. I am the chairperson of the Criminal Justice Committee for our NAACP unit. The NAACP strongly supports comprehensive police reform. And recently the Sterling Heights Police Department received their accreditation from the Michigan Law Enforcement Accreditation Committee. And what this will require now is body-worn cameras for police officers and implicit bias training and de-escalation training. Do you believe in police reform, and do you think that other departments in the Macomb County area should be aspiring to receive the same accreditation?
Okay, we're going to go Henry. We're going to hear from you now.
Emphatically, yes. I was so glad to and honored to support a budget that supported that and support the police chief and our city manager as they directed our department to move that way. Emphatically, every department, absolutely, yes. They're there to serve the people. They are professionals in what they do, and they need to be trained and funded in a professional manner. So, yes.
Thank you, Henry. We're going to go with Joel.
As far as police reform goes, I think this should be done at a federal standard level. No matter what district, city you live in, anything, you follow a federal standard. And I am for police reform 100%. I believe in the body cams. I believe in whistleblower protection in these matters, where other cops can, tell on other cops and be secure in their job. If other cops protect other cops, you'll always have bad cops. We got to weed out the bad cops, just like we're all humans. We all, and police are a little different. They're humans with power. And sometimes it does go to their head. We need to weed those out, but we also need our police. A lot of people, a lot of richer people can afford private security. I'm a Mexican American. I was raised in Chicago. We didn't have it. We had the police. Now, did I like when the lights turned on behind me? No, I didn't. But I was probably doing something wrong. But police reform is a must. And one more thing I wanted to say about the racism that keeps on going on. Martin Luther King even said himself, content of your heart, not the color of your skin. And I think this is where it becomes divisive. Why do we need to say we need a black woman here? We need a Latino there. I closed my eyes for a second and I was listening to you all. I'm not a Democrat, but if I had to vote for a Democrat in District 10, I'm voting for Rhonda. Just because she came out and said, Black people have different political points of view. That tells me that she is willing and looking at both sides. Where every other Democrat in 10 cut up Republicans, cut up Trump. January 6th is a dead horse. There's been burnings throughout this whole country for the last 2 years. Rhonda, somebody as a Democrat, I could get behind just because she sees both political views, and that's what we need more of. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Brian.
I want to talk on this for a second. I wanted to dedicate my life to law enforcement. I went through the whole training. I was 2 weeks away from Quantico. I aged out of the process. There was some situation. I was considered by Mr. Marlinga to be a prosecutor in Macomb. I care very much about criminal justice reform. And some of my ideas go back to hiring. And I think we really need to look at the hiring of police departments throughout the United States. And when I went through the process to be a federal agent, it was so intensive. It was so hard to become an agent. And what I want to see, and one of the things I think that would eliminate a lot of the issues and a lot of the systemic racism and a lot of the issues that we're seeing throughout America, is that if we focus on hiring practices, and if we can work at the congressional level, at the federal level, and if we could set a standard throughout the country of hiring practices within police departments, I think we would see a decrease in systemic racism. I would think we would see a decrease in a lot of the issues that are going on in communities. And this is coming from someone who wanted to dedicate his life to this profession. So I take it very to heart. And I think it is imperative that we always watch those with power and make sure we are safe from those who are meant to keep us safe. And, and that is a big part of my platform, a big part of who I am. So I just wanted to say that really quickly, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Any other candidates? Rhonda?
Yeah, I think that unchecked power is a problem. And unfortunately, that's what we have really in our police forces. That is, it's checked in almost every other aspect of our society. I struggle a little bit with implicit bias training because I feel like we stay on this training treadmill and struggle to get to accountability. I do believe that police officers, really the way that policing was established in this country is a challenge and brings with it some very systemic issues. So too many things are, thrown on the police for sure. I mean, I know many police officers, and we spar and have our debates, not going to agree about everything, but we have to get back to looking at the core of policing and how we unravel ourselves out of the way policing was established in this country. So, the implicit bias, I don't know, I kind of feel like implicit bias wears off somewhere around kindergarten. But we know when we're biased toward each other. What do we do about that? And, how do we have checks and balances so that that's not okay? Because it's not all right for us to continue saying, well, let's keep training folks while, Black, brown, poor people are dying while we try to wait and get this together. So it's more than just training. And I think we really have to revisit what public safety looks like as a whole, and not just look at, because it's just as deadly when a prosecutor is corrupt and, takes the life away from someone while they rot in a jail. So we have to look at the entire system up and down the chain and not just go for the shiny dangling object, and look at systemic change and not just kind of, cherry picking what the topic of the day is.
Thank you, Rhonda. We'll move it over to Angela and then Huwaida.
Thank you. So I'm the daughter of a criminal defense attorney, great granddaughter to a criminal defense attorney. I also worked in Cook County Jail with women inmates to help them transition out of incarceration, and saw, just a tremendous amount of challenges within the criminal justice system as a whole. I'd support efforts at reforming and looking at supporting things like the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and anything that we could do to help ensure strong public safety, as well as folks feeling like they are supported as well by public safety.
Thank you, Angela, and Huwaida, and then Carl. Oh, Huwaida, you are muted for me.
Right. I 100% agree that we need police reform, and not just police reform, but criminal justice reform in general. I think that we need to reimagine the criminal justice system, and that incorporates a lot of things that were spoken about here. I agree with Rhonda that just implicit bias training is not enough, but we need more resources. That's not to say that we don't need this training. We do need this training, but we also need to demilitarize our police system. And this is not the same as saying defund the police at all. Actually fund the police, but fund them so that there are these they're all wearing cameras. Fund them so that they are able to hire the personnel that is needed. So it's not always police officers with weapons that are answering certain calls for help, that we have mental health professionals that are part of the Community Safety Bureau police system. I think that there is a problem that when we call for this kind of reform, some people take it as if we're saying defund the police or we're against the police, and that's not it at all. We need to look at our police officers as our brothers, our uncles, our sisters, our fathers, because they are community members. And as I think Rhonda said, it's community safety. That is the thing. What do we do to improve the community safety or safety in our communities? And that is some of the things that I've talked about here. And I know we're on time. I also think from a legal, the qualified immunity and what that does to hold up accountability and prevent that accountability. Because whether on the criminal justice side or even on the civil side of the law, qualified immunity lets too many officers that do wrong civilians off the hook.
Thank you, Huwaida and Carl.
Yeah, first, I agree with Joel Needham saying that we have to have federal standards, and I agree with everything that the other speakers said, especially what Hueda just said. But when I was prosecutor, I put myself through all the various forms of police training to really get a feeling of what the adrenaline feels like when you're in one of those situations. And it is a tough situation. There are good people in the police departments. The training has to be all the more important, all the more audited and enforced. I represented a young Black motorist in Battle Creek who was arrested late at night, taken out of the car, got in a struggle with one police officer. The next car on the scene came up, and the officer came up, and he gave my client a football-style kick to the head. That's nowhere in police training. The settlement was good. I would have rather taken it to trial, but the settlement was enough that the young man said, no, I have enough. I don't want to take a chance. But what I wanted to expose in that case, and what I hope to do if I'm in Congress, is to point out that the Battle Creek Police Department had all of the right materials, said all of the right things, but somehow in the heat of the moment, one of the officers at least couldn't do what the trainings clearly said. So what Hueda said important in terms of getting more funding for the police, for the psychological training, for the testing, for the role playing, to understand that when the adrenaline hits, you don't default to the most basic barbaric thing, that you continue to remember that we're dealing with human beings that can be brought under control with a de-escalation of force much more effectively and jumping to highest level immediately. So all of the speakers were right on.
Thank you, Carl. And if there are no other candidates that want to answer this question, we do have a question from Facebook. And would like for everyone, all the candidates, if you can take about a minute to answer this question, it would be very helpful. And so this person wants to know how each of you feel about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I know that's a heavy one, but if you can take about a minute to let us know what you're thinking. And Henry, we'll go with you, and then Kelly.
Yeah, real quick, it's criminal. Vladimir Putin is a war criminal. He needs to be tried and convicted. I know people are screaming that Joe Biden said that and they're calling it regime change. I don't care. He's killing innocent people for no reason at all. He is a war criminal. This has got to stop. This has got to end. No World War III, no wars, no more crazy people running countries. He needs to be made an example of.
Thank you, Henry. And Kelly.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment that I am a first-generation American on my father's side. His family fled Nazi Germany. So he is seeing a repeat happening in Ukraine. And I agree that Putin is a war criminal. I agree that he should be tried by the international tribunals, and that we need to send more aid to Ukraine, what they're asking for, like the Stinger missiles, anti-tank things, whatever they need. But the skies, that's a different thing, because we don't want to trigger Putin and have him send off a nice little warhead toward us. That would not be a good thing, obviously. But I agree that it's a crime, it's criminal, and it's disgusting and horrifying.
Thank you, Kelly. And we have Rhonda and then Joel.
Thank you, London. I think that, it's unfortunate that challenges like this make us look inward as a country, because we struggle to deal with our own challenges of inequity. We are all but rendered hypocrites now when we try to go after Putin. And, he is horrific on every level. I have entertained my son. I have a 24-year-old son. He speaks fluent Russian. He speaks Ukraine. He has friends there. And, we sit up a couple nights a week listening to, him talk, and friends listening to bombs in the background, and that. It's horrible. This is a problem that has been a long time in the making, and it's so important that we get, that problem there. Putin believes he can just go in and take over these countries because he can pretty much determine, what the response is going to be. We have to we have to walk the talk in this country so that we are credible when it is time to deal with folks like leaders like Putin, who are, dictators. If we can't understand how to deal with our own issues here, then, we're rendered hypocritical when we try to go in and deal with issues, because that's an equity issue that's happening over there. So I think it just speaks to more how we need to, look at how we deal with issues in our own country so that we are credible, because people need us to be able to stand up and be true allies. And I'm not suggesting that, nobody wants to trigger a third world war, but, this person has to be dealt with. So it has to be done strategically and in partnership with NATO. But, it also should make us take a really good look at ourselves.
Thank you, Rhonda. And we'll go to Joel.
Well, first off, my wife, she's Ukrainian and Slovakian. And so I'm saying, hell yeah, to Ukrainian people for holding out as long as they have. Now, Obama sent blankets. Trump did send a lot of assets, Stinger missiles, all the defensive weapons. And that's the reason why they're holding on right now. Poland wants to send jets. They want to bring the Ukrainian Air Force pilots over to Poland and fly the planes back. I see no difference between a Stinger missile and a jet. We need to arm the Ukrainians, not set foot in there, not use American military in there, but give them every asset, not just defense. They have to go on offense. You have to go on offense, even in your own country, to take back parts that were taken over. You're no longer playing defense. You got to play offense to take back your country. And if they get nothing but defensive weapons, they can never win. They can sustain, but can't win. No one wants a World War III. Putin is a horrible person. I'm more with the Lindsey Graham on this part. Somebody take him out. But we have to do more for Ukraine. Otherwise, you got Putin on NATO. And nothing's going to come good of that. Help Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. And we're going to go to Brian.
Of course, I stand with Ukraine. My father, my family has a long background, Polish heritage. My cousin's father was literally in a Nazi concentration camp, forced to work. My father fled from Nazi Germany to come to America when he was a toddler after the devastation that was caused. So what Putin's doing, he's a war criminal. I believe in justice. I believe that he should be tried as a war criminal. I believe that he should be given, the necessary, basically go through the process to be arrested and be tried as a war criminal. I 100% stand with the Ukrainian people. It's hard to watch because it's such a difficult thing going on and people are suffering, and my heart is with them, and I just hope that, and I trust in the White House, I trust that President Biden is doing the best he can to alleviate the situation.
Thank you, Brian. And we'll move to James.
Oh, hi. Yeah, this, I think it goes without saying that obviously we support Ukraine, and Putin definitely isn't in the wrong. But the issue I see here, and actually I feel pretty good about this, is what I'm seeing a lot of countries coming together to try to address this. This is not just a war, battle of equipment. What you are seeing is sanctions, you are seeing attacks or efforts to destabilize the economy globally. There's multiple countries coming together to help make this happen. There will be long-term impacts to Russia on this. And how this thing, putting Putin as a criminal, I got a little concerned with regards to just the system of holding people accountable for things. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. It might not, but the main thing I see here is that we're seeing all these countries coming together, and it's not just a war of military going on. There's multiple other things going on that's coordinated that will have long-term. And I honestly do think that's putting some of the biggest pressure on Russia because they're seeing just long-term, this is not going to help them at all. The Ukrainians do not want them there. They will not sustain this, even if they are presently there, because the people will not allow it. And more importantly, their economy is going to suffer long-term because everyone else is standing up and standing together against this. So I feel very good about that.
Thank you, James. Huwaida?
I agree that Putin is committed a crime and is committing crimes. Aggression, invading, it is a war crime. I want to piggyback a little bit on what Rhonda is saying, though. We have to be concerned with the role of the US in calling for certain things because of the hypocrisy that is on display now. And it's not only with the US, but one of the things that I liked about Biden's platform is him saying that we have to put human rights at the center of US foreign policy. And that's not done equally. It's pick and choose for all of us, and all saying that Putin needs to be tried on war crimes. Okay, but you try war crimes at the International Criminal Court, which the US is not a member of, and the US has actively lobbied and threatened to sanction the International Criminal Court for wanting to pursue crimes against other countries that we consider are to be our friends. The United States sells billions of dollars worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia, which is starving and bombing Yemen, the poorest country in the world, and also supporting, unfortunately, other dictatorial and repressive regimes. So we do need to look at the role of the US to get rid of this hypocrisy so that we can raise our moral standing. Rhonda talked about inside the United States. I agree 100%, but also with regard to our foreign policy. I have lived under bombs falling. I have worked in refugee camps, and my heart goes out every single day to those people fleeing, the mothers with their children. I've received women coming on dinghies across the Mediterranean Sea because countries wouldn't let them in because they came from non-white countries. So in a way, I wholeheartedly support the international response. But I also want to, just because it hasn't been said and a lot of other things have been said that I agree with, that the way that the world has been treating Ukrainian refugees is 100% the way that refugees all over the world need to be treated. And the way that we are coming together to condemn what Putin is doing, because it is a crime, it is wrong. He's and not only against the people of Ukraine, 100%, they deserve their freedom, but also for his own people. But we need to have the same response when other countries, our friends or not our friends, are also engaged in these kinds of war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Thank you, Huwaida. And so I'm going to turn it over to Carl and then Angela, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Emily.
Okay, Henry Yanis is right. Everybody else is right also. Remember, the very first count in the Nuremberg war trials against the Nazi criminals was the planning and waging of a war of aggression. That is a war crime. Russia, as part of the Soviet Union, participated in that. The precedent is set. It is a war crime to aggressively plan and then carry out a war of aggression. We have to hold Putin accountable. Now, to do that, we don't want to start World War III, but it means that until he is turned over for a trial, we're going to have to keep up the pressure on Russia for a long time. We're going to have to isolate them diplomatically, economically. But in order to be able to do that long term, look, we got to think about the world. All of the problems kind of come together. We will never be able to have a moral foreign policy like Huwaida is asking for until we turn away from a foreign policy which is built upon the self-interest of the big oil companies and the people who control that money. We have to divorce U.S. foreign policy from that type of buying and selling of energy products. We can do that if we develop a plan to have a green economy. There's enough power every day in the sun, the wind, the tides, the heat from the earth to provide all the energy that we need. If we do that, we cut the heart out of the ability of Russia to intimidate their neighbors with their oil and gas supplies. We cut the heart out of the ability of Saudi Arabia and Iran to do what they do. We get back to a foreign policy which could be benign, which could be wise, which could be moral. And we just don't do that. Now, is that too idealistic? Maybe it sounds so, but it's the only way that we can go into the future with any confidence. And so I applaud what Huwaida just said. We have to make U.S. foreign policy moral, and we haven't been doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Angela?
I will be brief because I know we are short on time. I certainly stand with Ukraine and would continue, if elected, to administer sanctions and a variety of other efforts to protect the Ukrainian people.
Angela. All right, I'll be brief and then I'm going to pass it off to Pamela to wrap us up for the night. But I want to again thank all the candidates for coming. And one of the things I was just reflecting on a moment ago is that while we have some difference of opinions, and what I noticed the difference of opinions stem from is we all agree we're being divided, but we disagree on who's doing the dividing, and that's okay. What I noticed though is that there is actually a lot of alignment across the aisle here on safe storage laws, right? Gun reform, police reform, support for Ukraine. And I really want us to sit with that as we go apart tonight, because that is really powerful. If we truly all care about change here, I think we need to recognize that there is more common ground when we really have these conversations. And that is what we're doing tonight. That is what I hope we carry forward. I know we would love for all of you to come back to just one of our general membership meetings with the NAACP. We would love for you all to be members. I think we have a lot of powerful people on this meeting that could really, truly, whether elected or not, work together to make change in Macomb. So let's keep that momentum going. Follow us, follow the candidates on social media. Let's keep the conversations going. And to that, I'm going to go to Pamela. Oh, you're muted, Pamela.
This has been absolutely exciting to have all of the candidates come together and share a little bit about themselves, and an opportunity for the audience to ask questions, really important questions, to get to know who you are. And we certainly want to thank our candidates for their participation in tonight's candidate forum. And I truly want to thank the audience, the Macomb County voters, for being here tonight. With that said, please reach out to these candidates, and I'm speaking to the audience now. Please reach out to these candidates. Continue the dialogue. Continue to get to know who they are and their platform. It's really, really important for each individual to educate themselves so that you can be an informed voter for the upcoming elections. And remember that our primary is scheduled for August 2nd of 2022, and the general elections is scheduled for November 8th of 2022. I want to thank you all for participating in this event this evening. Let's continue the dialogue. If you have any questions as it relates to the NAACP, please reach out to us. And once again, I thank you and I bid you a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. We will talk to you all soon.
Everyone, thank you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
You guys have a good night now.
Thank you, Joel, for
Set
coming.
up another one.
Yes, we will.
Another one soon, like tomorrow or something.
No problem.
Bring more Republicans, please.
Invite them, please.
They were invited. They
Well, I
were
showed up.
invited.
Thank
A lot of
you.
class Joel
Thank you
to
for
show
coming,
up.
Joel.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank you,
for
Joel.
showing
Yeah,
up, Joel.
Thank
send
you.
out-
You did a great
everyone.
job. You
So
really,
when
really
do you
did.
guys plan on having another one? I would love to get out more.
You know
Get more
what?
people in.
We have talked about doing some more that are more race specific. So like just the Congressional 9, just the Congressional 10, so that there's more time to focus on your race. And,
Now, let me ask you a question. The Macomb County and NAACP, they're actually located in 9, the new 9.
Technically, yeah, Northern. Yep. Mhm.
So, all right.
That's my.
We need some more of them in there.
That's my county, or that's my district, I should say. So we will be in touch with everybody here, and maybe we'll get the ones that decided not to come tonight next time. So.
They're not cowards.
That's all right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks for not being a coward.
Hey, I'll carry enough for everybody.
Okay.
Y'all
Thank
have
you,
fun.
everyone. I'm